Chapter 1 Come River Valley. When I got to the 24th, I was assigned to the 11th Field Artillery Battalion. We had 155mm howitzers and tractors as prime movers. They didn't have a job for me because they weren't using tractors, they were using 5-ton trucks. Like Deuce and a Half, but bigger. They were able to carry a heavier load, and they used them for the ammo trucks, and they pulled the 155mm howitzers. The 24th Division in Japan was spread out all over Kyushu. The 19th Infantry Regiment was at Beppu, the 34th Infantry Regiment was at Seisbo, and the 21st Infantry Regiment was at Kumamoto. The military police and division headquarters were up on the large Japanese island to the north. After I joined the 52nd Field Artillery, I was assigned to the Maintenance Division because of my MOS with tracked vehicles. They didn't need any more people. I was assigned to the Fire Direction Center, which I didn't have any problem with because I knew my trigonometry. After I was with Fire Direction for a while, they wanted a cook, so I became a cook. I got every other day off, and I was able to see a lot of places in Japan. That first year was lovely. It was really a paradise over there. The next year, in June, the North Koreans decided they would move into South Korea, so they put us all on alert, and we loaded up our stuff. We went from Japan to Korea by LST, landing ship tank. What was on the LST was most of A battery and a little bit of the service battery, which had the trucks to carry ammo for the artillery people and a bit of headquarters battery, like Fire Direction. They grabbed just enough of headquarters and service batteries to enable us to man the howitzers. We had 6 155mm howitzers. We lost one when it fell off the railroad car someplace, and they had to leave it. We got to our assembly area, where we got off the railroad trains. There was a schoolyard there. That's where all of our equipment was assembled. We were in the schoolyard when the North Korean aircraft started dropping bombs on the train station and then came up the road strafing. A 3/4 ton, which was the wire sections, had a 50 cal on it. I manned the 50 and engaged the planes when they came up the road. There were 4 Yak-9 fighters, at least that's what I thought they were. They were single-engine, prop-driven aircraft. I was headed up after the road after that attack, and Colonel Smith came up to me and said, "Who was firing that 50? I said I did. "We're going to give you credit for that one," he said, because many of them went down in flames, and possibly another one. Never heard anything more about it, but I did get a Bronze Star later, with a V for doing that. When night fell on July 4th, 1950, we got up north of Pusan to the engagement area. We only had 5 guns, and we moved into position about 3 o'clock in the morning on the 5th of July. The battery was back about 3/4 of a mile from where the infantry troops were. The next morning, at 8 o'clock, that's when the North Korean attack started. There was one big hill on the right side of the road and on the small knoll on the left side. B Company was on the left side of the road and C Company was on the right side. The artillery was to the left side of the road, which would be the west side. They put one gun forward and they called up the anti-tank position. I was on the left side of the road with the infantry. I went up as a supplement for the infantry and manned a 50 cal anti-aircraft gun. It was mounted on an anti-aircraft mount about 4 feet high. It was meant to be dug in with a horseshoe-type revetment so you could walk around the mount with the gun and point it up in the air and still see what you were shooting at. There was all rock, so it was sitting on the surface. On top of the ground, like that, you were really exposed. There were 2 50 cal anti-aircraft guns. One was on a big hill, and I was with the other on a small hill. A guy from Service Battery and me were the only 2 artillerymen on the west side. Some of the guys went up the 2 4-inch rocket launchers, the kind that they used in World War II. When the tanks started coming down the road, we engaged them. When we ran out of ammo, all we could do was sit there and watch them go by. We fired, and the infantry with them deployed. They had to deploy to come around at us. It was a delaying action that we did up until about 2 o'clock in the afternoon. Sometime around 2 o'clock, a corporal from Air Section said, "We're going." He was with the L-4 observation airplane for the artillery, the spotters. There was no observation plane with us. The corporal from Air Section was a supplement, just like some of the others of us, a square peg in a round hole. Still, he was a corporal, and we were just privates, so when he asked us to go with him, we went. We walked down to where the pass was filed and the rice paddies around to the east. We joined back up with the artillery that was moving out from their position. Then, we got to the town, and all the North Korean tank crews were having a good time sitting on their tanks in the middle of the town, taking their breaks. We had to find another way to get around there. We skirted around, and a couple days later we joined back up with our units. After that, we wound up going down the road a little bit into Pyongyang and put up another delaying action 2 or 3 days later, and then another at Chonan and another at Chochiwan and Hadong and Inchon. We were trying to hold them back so other units could come up there, They hadn't landed yet. We were all by ourselves, just the units that were in the original task force sent to the Osan area. We moved into position about a mile north of the Kum River, near Taejan, on July 11th, and the 13th Field Artillery had caught up with us. The 11th Field Artillery had caught up with us in the 19th Infantry and part of the 34th Infantry. The 21st was on the line along the river, and the enemy attack began on July 13th. I was with A Battery Fire Control and running wire. I was back to my regular job. At that time, A Battery was supporting the 21st Infantry's 1st Battalion. When we got back to the perimeter, we were supporting the 2nd Battalion. Reinforcements began to trickle in. On July 14th was when the 21st Infantry was relieved by the 19th. We went to the road, which was just below Taejan, to a defensive position. I've read since that between July 13th and the 16th, the 19th and 34th Regiments of the 2nd Infantry Division engaged the two North Korean divisions at the Kum River. They took 650 casualties of the 3,400 men that fought there. When we went to withdraw, we found that we couldn't withdraw because the North Koreans had blocked the road behind us. I was with A Battery, and its men, unlimbered by the guns while they sat in the road, they fired at the North Koreans. Every unit there was caught in the Kum River Valley. The North Koreans shelled us for a day and a half before that decision was made to move out. That night, we destroyed our vehicles and guns. 105s, 155s, everything that was there was all destroyed. The 13th Field had 105s, and the 52nd Field had 155s. All equipment there was trapped. Only a few vehicles made it out. After it got dark and the men destroyed the vehicles, they left in small groups. It took about 3 days for the army to get all of them together down by Taejan. At Taejan, that's where the 34th Infantry got nearly annihilated. The 34th had 1,549 men when it defended Taejan. It lost 530 of them there. The 63rd Field Artillery lost all its guns and equipment. On July 20th, North Koreans overran the 24th Division headquarters, and the 34th Infantry withdrew. By the 21st, North Koreans had captured the whole damn place. The division lost 922 men killed and 228 wounded of the 3,900 fighting. Many men were still missing in action. On August 1st, the 19th Infantry Regiment tried to stop the enemy at Chinju, west of Pusan, and was forced back. They lost 90 men killed. On August 25th, when the 24th Division was relieved by the 2nd Infantry Division, only 184 men were left in the 34th Infantry Regiment. The 24th Infantry Division lost more than 3,600 men in 17 days. Still, they delayed the North Koreans enough so that the 25th Infantry Division, the 5th RCT, the Marines, and the 1st Cavalry were able to land at Pusan. Then, the 29th Regiment from Okinawa showed up, and they were just as under strength as we were. We kept retreating and setting up roadblocks and withdrawing after the North Koreans nearly surrounded us. Their tactic was to try to surround us, set up a barrier behind us to keep us from moving any farther away so they could annihilate us. We did that until we reached the Naktong River. Once we arrived, we're in a defensive perimeter that the U.S. and South Korean forces created north and along the Mekong River to the west. We caught the North Koreans every time we went out to find and repair breaks in the communication wire to run new line. You'd run into them in little gullies. They'd already given up. They were wounded so bad they didn't even know where they were. A few had body wounds and pus coming out of them. Most of the time, when I was in Korea, I didn't know where we were. We were moved from place to place. We went down this road or up that road where we were told to go. It was years after the fighting stopped that I read about where we were. On August 23rd, the 24th Infantry Division was replaced by the 2nd Infantry Division, and we were moved into reserve. Because we had no guns left, we had to be resupplied, retrained, and get replacements. The 1st Cavalry Division was also there, and the 25th Division was there, and then we were able to hold the North Koreans back. I was still with A Battery, 1st Battalion, and after we were resupplied, we went back into action. A Battery and the 1st Battalion of the 52nd Field Artillery became part of what they called the Fire Brigade. A Battery was detached from the 52nd. Anytime there was a hot spot, we would go there and supply artillery fire. If the North Koreans broke in somewhere else, we would move and support the infantry there. It was back and forth. That's the way we went at the Naktong River. Sometimes I'd be right up there in the observation post, operating the telephones for the forward observer. Sometimes I was with the wire team that kept communications between all of us linked up together. Sometimes I was on the switchboard. Sometimes I was running wire, and sometimes I was salvaging wire. Wherever we were needed, that's where we were. There was fighting in the perimeter from August 4th to September 18th. The invasion at Inchon was on September 15th, and then we moved out and went all the way up to the Yalu River. The first year of that war was terrible. At Taejan, we lost the entire 34th Regiment. At the Kum River, we lost most of the 19th Regiment and the 21st Regiment. It was about the only regiment we had left, and part of the 5th RCT, Regimental Combat Team, which came in during the Pusan perimeter fighting. They replaced the 34th Infantry Regiment, which suffered heavy losses at Kum River. In November, our units were 12 to 17 miles up the Yalu, but I was able to see the Yalu River because I went up with a recon vehicle. I went up there the night before the Chinese decided to attack. They attacked early in the morning and got all those guys in sleeping bags. They rolled up on them like nothing. They annihilated them. The Chinese came in and pushed us back down south again. Right after Thanksgiving, we got the word that we were moving back because the Chinese climbed over the 7th and 8th Cavalries and were already getting ready to surround us. At the same time, the Marines were over at Chosin. The units were asleep. It was cold. Everyone was asleep. They moved into position and were told nothing was going on involving the Chinese. The Chinese just fooled them completely. They clobbered 2 ROC divisions and 2 1st Cavalry Division regiments. The ones that didn't run just got killed. When the Chinese came in and attacked the 7th and 8th Cavalries and other units, our units started to withdraw. All we were doing was fighting a delaying action all the way back down. They had enough equipment on the road, and we were in about the middle of the column as it came over. The whole 8th Army was there. We didn't run into any significant problems except breakdowns of equipment. Our 3/4-ton trucks broke down, and we got pushed quite a few miles by a big half-track with 40mm guns on it. It had a wide engine, and the heat from the engine felt good. It got up against us and kept pushing us. When we got to a place where they could get off the road, we went off, and then they repaired it, and then off we went again. We lost our first 3/4-ton truck at the Kum River, but this 3/4 we had in the Iron Triangle when I rotated home. My battalion didn't lose any more equipment after the Kum River. Our unit withdrew to the next position down on the Inchon River. I don't know what the names of all those places were. Wherever the 21st Infantry was, I was. The only times I ever saw names of where we were was when I went back to the Fire Direction Center, when we laid lines back there and seen names on firing maps on the table. When I was in the Fire Direction Center, I knew where we were, but otherwise, the sun would come up and the sun went down. And one day, it was just like the next one. We wound up fighting in the Iron Triangle, just north of the 38th parallel. I remember we captured some Chinese there. I rotated out while we were there, and I went in as an individual. I turned in all my old stuff. They gave us halfway decent clean uniforms and shipped us out. Then we got on a little transport someplace in Japan. They put us on the first troop transport with troops that came back from Korea. I went home to Oakland, and about 15 hours later, I was on an airplane going home. While I was in Korea, the Army promoted everyone in the wire section to corporal and gave everyone a Bronze Star. It was my second Bronze Star. I went from private to corporal. I never did make PFC. Well, I was a bad boy in Japan, but it didn't count against a Good Conduct Medal. One of the corporals and I were out one night and missed the last train back to Camp Hakata from Fukuoka. We got one of those old charcoal burning taxis to take us back, but he ran out of wood and we had to hoof the rest of the way back to camp. By the time we got back, we had already missed Reveille. I got Article 104 punishment and had to sand an old table for what seemed like months. I got to sand it and paint it all up. The first sergeant thought it was funny. Painted his footlocker with his name on it. I went to his retirement party when he left. He was a big fat guy. After leave, I went to Fort Belvoir in a construction engineer company. I had some training on heavy equipment before I went to Korea, and I still had it as one of my secondary MOSs. Artillery was my primary MOS, but I had fire control, optics, truck driver, and cook as my secondary MOS. I was discharged at Fort Belvoir in midsummer 1951. Sometimes, in my dreams, I'm at the bottom of a big hole trying to get out. That's the way it was over there. We were always at the bottom of the mountains. You're always trying to get up to where you could do something. We used the roads, they used the mountains. They were looking down at us all the time we were there. Events in the war come back to me now. Most of the time it's like looking at black and white pictures, nothing moving in them. There's no sound anymore, except for memories when we were in reserve one time in the Naktong part of the Pusan perimeter, and they moved an 8-inch howitzer right outside the tent we were in. They cut loose about 4 o'clock in the morning, and the ground vibrated. I think I had somebody looking after me, because I made it through Osan, and I don't know why. I don't know how. A lot of other people didn't make it. I made it through the Kum River Valley. I made it through the Pusan perimeter crap, and on through subsequent battles.